call to order the regular board meeting of Tuesday, March 13th, 2012. We will start with the invocation by Pastor Perry Peterson from Crossroads Bible Fellowship, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Supervisor Kehoe. If you'd all stand, please.
Good morning. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, holy and awesome is your name. I pray that you will grant strong leadership to Supervisors David Kehoe, Leonard Modi, Glenn Hawes, Linda Hartman, and Les Baugh, who have been sent here by the people of Shasta County and who have been ordained by you to govern this county. Help them to conduct the affairs of this county with wisdom, bravery, and true justice. I pray that they may truly represent the needs of the people and work in harmony for the advancement of all men, women, and children in this county. Grant Tom Paseco, Stephen Carlton, Larry Lees, and all other county leaders the gifts of wisdom, justice, and counsel and fortitude that they may conduct the affairs of men in accordance with the will of God. And I also pray for the citizens of this county that they will respect lawful authority that is justly exercised, that those gathered here in this chamber will honor and respect one another and will exercise their voice with an attitude of humility that we may truly love our neighbor as ourselves. I pray that your peace, your blessing, your redemption will permeate every relationship in this county and city government, and in our schools, and in our marketplace, in our neighborhoods. And I ask this in the name of my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Supervisor Kehoe. The next item is a public comment period, open time. If you want to come forward and speak, please give your name and your comments. Each speaker is allocated 3 minutes to speak. Comments should be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the board pursuant to the Brown Act. Action or board discussion cannot be taken on open time matters other than receive comments and, if deemed necessary, to refer the subject matter to the appropriate department for follow-up and or to schedule the matter on a subsequent board agenda. I have one person at this point. That's Sheriff Tom Pasenko.
Good morning, Chairman Modi, members of the board. Tom Pasenko, Sheriff. By now you saw in the media that we were successful in a grant through AB 900 Phase 2 for a new jail. And back in January, the board authorized the application for the jail construction funding established by the Public Safety Offender Rehabilitation Services Act of 2007, otherwise known as AB 900 Phase 2. And it was to construct a new 230-bed minimum security jail facility. And only about 20 counties were invited to submit applications for the funding, and the counties competed on a by population classes, large, medium, and small counties, and Shasta County competed with other small counties with a population fewer than 200,000. My team prepared the application. I presented additional information before the Corrections Standards Authority Executive Steering Committee, and the Executive Steering Committee approved the application and recommended to the full CSA board approval, and the CSA board met on March 8th and approved our application. And I'd like to thank the county team, CAO's analyst Julie Hope, Public Works Director Pat Minturn, and engineer Eric Wiedemeyer, and the firm of Nichols and Melberg Rosetto, my undersheriff Sheila Ashman, and Captain Anthony Bertain, Dave Sokol, and Beverly Strand for helping put the application together, and it was a lot of work. The board has until June 6, 2012 to accept the award, and I believe the short-term challenges such as a cash match and reimbursable costs can be met, but the long-term ongoing costs are the big challenge, and we must be able to look beyond the next fiscal quarter and the next budget year to 5 years and beyond, and all funding ideas and options must be given consideration, and this funding won't likely be available again, and the impacts of prison realignment will exacerbate and certainly community concerns about jail capacity issues. The county budget is Its accounts and funding streams are very complex, and I recommend the CAO and I comprise a work group or a task force comprised of members of the CAO staff, auditor staff, and sheriff staff to try and explore all those options in identifying funding streams for the CAO's review and consideration by the board in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff, and we look forward to the forthcoming report.
Thanks.
I don't have any other requests for open time at this point. So seeing none, no others, then we will move on to the regular calendar, R1, which is a proclamation for Women's History Month and to be presented by Supervisor Kehoe.
Thank you, Chairman Modi. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is a proclamation of the Shasta County Board of Supervisors, Women's History Month, March 2012. Whereas the purpose of Women's History Month is to recognize and celebrate the courage, vision, and leadership of women of every race, class, and ethnic background. And whereas these women have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of Shasta County, the state of California, our nation, and our global community. And whereas the year 2012 marks the 164th anniversary of the women's right movement, which resulted in many rights for women, including the right to vote in 1920. And whereas March is designated Women's History Month in our nation, and we encourage all residents of Shasta County to commemorate and honor women for their countless contributions to our community, our nation, and world by learning more about the significant role women have played in our history. Now therefore be it resolved that the Shasta County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims March 2012 as Women's History Month in Shasta County and celebrates a special time to recognize the great achievements of women. And this is signed by Chairman Leonard Modi on behalf of the Shasta County Board of Supervisors, dated March 13th, 2012, and I'll move approval of this proclamation.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. This morning, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the League of Women Voters, Mrs. Janet Terrell will accept this award. Mrs. Terrell. Mrs. Terrell, on behalf of my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors, it is indeed a pleasure to present you with this award on the behalf of all, all of the women in Shasta County. It is indeed timely that we are presenting this today because there was a lead article the other day in the Los Angeles Times noting that Sarah Blakely is now a billionaire. She's 41 years old. She is a self-made woman, didn't inherit money, and she is on the cover of Forbes magazine. So that's why this is so timely, and I'd like to give you the opportunity of saying anything to us.
Okay. I want to acknowledge the progress Shasta County has made. We moved here 28 years ago, and there weren't women in leadership positions in the county. I've been observing the county operations for quite a while, and I look around every time I come in here, and I'm impressed. I see women in this county in leadership positions, but I have to tell you, I don't care about gender. If you can do the job, you get it. And that's my bottom line. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Terrell. Let's show our appreciation. I might add parenthetically that every week, Mrs. Terrell is here representing the league, witnessing our meetings. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you, Supervisor Kehoe, and Ms. Terrell, I couldn't agree with you more on your comments. If you do the job, then that's the person that should be there. Next item is the consent calendar. The following consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They may be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested person may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and consideration. I have no advance requests. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to remove an item? Seeing none, the pleasure of the board.
Move approval.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Move on to regular calendar R2, Administrative Office Board of Supervisors, receive a legislative update and receive supervisor's report. Mr. Lee? Really? Things are going that well in the state? Find that hard to believe.
Let me give him an item then. Mr. Lees, what do you see the team looking like that would take a look at finances for the possibility of jail financing?
Well, I'd like to have it led by that person that Dave Keogh referred to, that billionaire who was on the cover of Forbes magazine. I'm looking at the sheriff to lead that, and actually Sheriff Pasenko and I have had this discussion a couple times, but more recently yesterday, late afternoon. I would look for a representative from my office, probably the public safety analyst, Ms. Hope, but the team itself to be led by the sheriff, whoever he would deem, important, whether it be Mike Lindsay, his CFO, or the undersheriff or himself, whoever he deems. So that would be a portion of it to do that. And then probably include somebody potentially from the auditor's office to identify any potential funding issues, if there's some parameters on some dollars, can we use it, can we not for this? And so that's what I kind of foresee moving forward with this. It's nothing that will be done overnight, because we're still going to have to see how the state budget shakes out. We know that, again, we have that, and you asked, we have that $13 billion gap in the state budget. And the governor this morning, actually it was yesterday afternoon, said that since the legislature is not approving the cuts that he's recommended to close that gap, that he will have to make cuts elsewhere. And because of those additional cuts, we have yet to see what that impact will be. So I'm going to be trying to determine two things: how the state is leaning towards balancing their budget and what impact that may have on the county. Then we're also, of course, looking at the budgets that will be turned in by the public safety, by sheriff's office, and all the other departments in the county to determine exactly how that's going to shake out. And so I don't see a decision coming forward until we receive all the existing budgets. Now, with that being said, and again, Sheriff Pasenko and I have talked about this before, and I think I've mentioned it in this forum once or twice also, but we had belief that PERS, as it relates to their pension assumptions, may be raising their assumptions, and that would cost the counties and cities statewide a lot more money. Yesterday or Friday, they came out with a letter saying that indeed they are going to have to raise those assumptions. Now, we're not sure exactly what level they will raise for Shasta County, but preliminary, it looked like it would create an additional expense to us of $5.5 million annually. Now, that's just PERS pension increase, not total cost. That's the increase. So we know that we're going to get hit with probably another $5.5 million annually in increased cost to keep up with the pension. The other thing that has increased is the health care cost. And just in one department alone, preliminary figures looking at that, it's a $2 million hit just in one department. That's another increase annually. So we're going to have to look at all these increases and make sure that we're not taking giant steps backwards, and make sure we have current needs and operating costs covered before we go forward. And I say that not to be pessimistic, but I want to be realistic. And I think I used the term in talking with Sheriff Pasenko. I said I just don't want to send any false notions out there that I'm very optimistic about where this funding may or may not come from. There are a couple ideas bouncing around in the back of my head that I'm going to talk when we get together with our team to determine if it's realistic and feasible or not. That may help. So I have a couple things, but I don't want to throw them out yet.
Well, don't worry, you're not giving us any indication of optimism there at all, so you can rest assured. No, my reason for asking, and you've related it in your report, is the only way to give us, the members of the Board of Supervisors, a fair view of finances is for you to allow a look at the whole county finance structure, and you've certainly stated that you're going to put members on the team that would allow that fair look, so thank you.
Mr. Hawes, you wanted to add to that?
Well, it is an exciting time, though, to even be picked, but it is an extreme challenge, but it's out a few years. Hopefully, our economy will get going in this country again, and that would make a big difference, so.
Yeah.
We have time to wait and look at it and study it, and that's an excellent idea, putting a team together to do that. I think we're on the right track, so. It is kind of exciting.
Okay, I will move on with Supervisor's report, and this week we'll start with you, Mr. Hawes.
Oh, I have nothing else to report, except that we're getting a little bit of moisture, lots of wind. Seems like this time of the year, the last storm was windy too, but maybe it'll let up and we'll really get down to putting some moisture where we need it.
I know that's what Channel 7 said last night, so I'm sure they'll be correct.
Yeah.
Severe weather first. We don't want the severe weather, just the wet weather. Supervisor Hartman?
I'll pass, thank you.
Supervisor Baugh?
Thank you, Chair Modi. I just wanted to congratulate Reading School of the Arts. Yesterday, they had their new flagpole dedication. I attended on behalf of the board. 550 very happy, anxious, fun, great schoolers. It was a great morning. And also, I wanted to congratulate the winners of the Healthy for Life Challenge for 2012. They are Lisa Martin Kempner, Susan Nolan, Tina Robertson, Robert Borden, and Margaret Richards. They won the challenge, about 40 teams in this year's version, and just appreciate county employees and staff that continue to find ways to encourage healthy lifestyles. That concludes my report.
Supervisor Kehoe?
Thank you, Chairman Modi. I have two things I'd like to report on. The first is I attended the Shasta County Mental Health and Alcohol and Drug Advisory Board meeting. I'd like to discuss briefly two aspects of that meeting. First, we were presented with an outstanding director's report by Donnell Ewert, and that report covered the current issues as applied to the department. It was an update on the Health and Human Services Agency, an update on the psychiatric hospital facility, health facility, the 2012-13 budget, Mental Health Services Act innovation grants, medical marijuana, path to health, and special education. First order work, and I have copies available for all of you. The second thing I'd like to talk about that was discussed at that meeting was an outstanding PowerPoint presentation by Dr. Decker concerning marijuana usage and associated outcomes among Shasta County residents. I also have a copy of this report for you, and if any member of the public is interested in receiving a copy of this report, we can make it available to you. So it was a meeting worth attending, and very good. The second thing that I'd like to mention is Mr. Lees and I attended the Healthy Shasta Partnership Leadership Team meeting where they provided an update of all of the activities, and I have that upstairs available for you also. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Kehoe. And I'd just like to report that I attended the Exchange Club, along with my colleague, the Exchange Club's annual Law Enforcement Awards, where they recognized outstanding members of our law enforcement community, which I think is very deserving. I'd like to special acknowledgement of several employees county employees who received these recognition as well. I attended the Sierra Sac Valley EMS board meeting. I have the board packet for those who'd like to review it. I can tell you that I am now the vice chair of the board. We will have a EMS Appreciation Day, which will be in 2 locations, one in Placer County, but in Shasta County on May 23rd, that's a Wednesday, from 9 to 3 o'clock, there'll be a EMS Appreciation Day, and there'll be more information to follow that. And also the Executive Director of the EMS board, or group will be coming forward. I've invited her to come before this board to give us a short presentation. And I put a tentative date of April 24th. We'll see if that works, but she would like to come up and give us an overview of kind of where we are with, now we made the changeover, and it's been about a year and a half, so. Good. And then also just the Northern California Water Association had their annual meeting last Friday, and I think that's all I have, so thank you. We will move on to the next item, R3, which is consider adopting a resolution authorizing Bill Gregory, a cattleman and Churn Creek Bottom landowner, Bob Wood, a Reading businessman, Gloria Randall, a Churn Creek Bottom landowner and farmer, Daniel Corbin, unemployed construction worker, and Jacob Myers, a Reading engineer contractor, to prepare, submit, and sign the attached rebuttal argument in support of resolution number 2011-091.
Thank you, Supervisor Modi, members of the board. If you recall, around the first week of November, we had a resolution passed by this Board of Supervisors that directed us to put a ballot initiative on, or put an initiative on the ballot that lets the people have an opportunity to vote on this particular measure. With that, as in February, the board then returned with an argument in support of that ballot measure that we asked to have put on there. One of the opportunities we have is, once an argument goes on the ballot, is to have very limited rebuttal statement put in place. Now, we can do that, the Board of Supervisors can do that, or any private citizens could do that. The recommendation before you today is to accept these 5 private citizens' rebuttal recommendation to go on the ballot as a support of our argument. This would be in support of, and if you go to attachment A on this, you'll see that it is in support of Measure A, if I get there here. This would be Measure A that talks about the Knighton Retail Center going forward. So looking for board approval or consideration on that.
I do have one person from the public wants to speak. I don't know if the board members want to hear that first, or if they want to. Well, you'd like to go first? Go ahead.
Mr. Lees, would you, for the benefit of those in the audience and those watching on television, would you mind reading Exhibit A?
Sure.
Thank you.
Shasta County needs jobs, good jobs, construction jobs, management jobs, maintenance jobs, and sales jobs. We need new sources of revenue for public safety to put deputy sheriffs back on the job. A yes vote on Measure A will put hundreds of local unemployed construction workers and contractors back to work. Measure A will generate millions of dollars yearly to replace lost public safety services. It will provide hundreds of thousands of dollars for public schools each year. The approval of the Knighton and Churn Creek Commons Retail Center was done the right way. It was the result of numerous neighborhood and public meetings, environmental and economic impact reports, and sound planning in conjunction with local farmers, businesses, property owners, and taxpayers. The I-5 at Knighton Road intersection has been planned for commercial activity since 1984. The change from part-time agriculture zoned land to commercial affects less than 0.5% of all the agricultural land in Shasta County. The existing water distribution service system in the area is inadequate for large-scale agriculture and has not been viably farmed for decades. In Shasta County, we take pride in our tradition of timber, grazing, crops, and open space. We believe in sound public planning for our land and quality projects that will create good long-term jobs to enhance the county's economic sustainability. Join with us and vote yes on Measure A. Let's put people back to work and keep our neighborhoods and communities safe.
Thank you, Mr. Lees.
Any other questions from the board at this time? Seeing none, then I will invite Mr. Don Kirk to come up and speak.
Board members, I'm here today because I was out of state when this was originally up before you. I am against the mall down there. I believe that the water table is not suitable for a major mall or any kind of a major business down there. As well, the on and off ramps and the overpass is not suitable. Several years ago, the city of Reading allocated South Bonneview Road as the next major area for box stores. It has adequate on and off ramp overpass. It is more suited than I feel the mall down there. As well, you have all those expensive homes down there, and I believe that a mall would lower the value of those homes. I do support it being on the ballot because I believe the voters would turn this down, and I do appreciate you letting me come here and speak my word. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk. Board, pleasure of the board. Mr. Kehoe?
Thank you, Chairman Modi. This morning, in preparation for consideration of this agenda item, I gave some thoughts about it, and I put some ideas down on paper. And I would like to share those ideas with you this morning. In my mind, the script that Mr. Lees read captures the very essence of the question at hand. Meaningful job creation and growing the local economy. And in my mind, we need not look to Washington or Sacramento to create job opportunities in Shasta County. We need to focus on local initiatives such as the one at hand. For who among us can speak about economic prosperity in Shasta County without talking about job creation? For who among us can talk about parents caring for their families without talking about job creation in Shasta County? For who among us can talk about effective public safety without talking about job creation in Shasta County? For in the end, whether you work in the private sector or the public sector, in education, in labor, or if you're retired, we all benefit when the other guy has a job. And that's what creates the economic vitality of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kehoe. Mr. Haas?
Very, very well said. Excellent. And by the way, the money that's coming in to do this is not local money. This is money coming from out of the area. Not one dime of county money is being put into this project. And it's a property rights issue also. I grew up in this country, in a free country, I thought, where I had the right to do with property as I wished. And it seems that that's gotten away from us somewhere along the line. And I think it's time to step up and protect property rights. So hopefully the people will really see the truth here and bring this project on, because it will create a lot of jobs, put deputies back on the road, things that Shasta County needs. And number one of all is the jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haas.
I'll move approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Second, Mr. Baugh. I would add just one more thing under comment. I agree with the statement, this is private dollars. I think that needs to be reinforced. I keep hearing that they think it's money perhaps that's coming from the county, but it's actually a private developer putting his dollars into this. And I know there's some issues and things that are trying to be worked on, particularly like traffic, but it's my understanding that somewhere in the magnitude of 5 times the amount of a normal traffic study has been spent on this, and the results are still the same. And so I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you, Supervisor.
The next item, R4, is to adopt a resolution authorizing Bill Gregory, a cattleman and Churn Creek Bottom landowner, Bob Wood, a Reading businessman, Gloria Randall, a Churn Creek Bottom landowner and farmer, Daniel Corbin, unemployed construction worker, and Jacob Myers, Reading engineering contractor, to prepare, submit, and sign the attached rebuttal argument opposing the Churn Creek Bottom Agricultural Lands General Plan Amendment Initiative. Mr. Lees?
Thank you, Chairman Modi, members of the board. This is similar as far as the timeline and what has taken place. Again, we have the ability to provide a rebuttal that is in support of our argument, or we can choose to accept someone else's rebuttal. Up for consideration today is to accept the rebuttal that has been submitted by these individuals, and it is found in Exhibit A. Let me just clarify exactly what that is. What we're talking about here is the initiative, whereas the previous agenda item was the building and the development itself of that corner. What we're talking about here is the initiative that covers close to 4,000 acres that actually puts on hold the zoning, any zoning changes for that area for 24 years, meaning that a private property owner would not be able to come and change or request any zoning. They could request it. They wouldn't be allowed to have any zoning changes for 24 years, regardless of what was being developed around them or what they wanted to do with their own property. And we fundamentally have, this board in their argument, have been opposed to taking away those types of private property rights from individuals and locking them up for 24 years. And so with that, we have this rebuttal argument, which is Exhibit A. Would you like me to read that, Supervisor Kehoe?
Well, I'll read it if you like.
Okay.
With the pleasure of the
Thank you,
permission.
Mr. Keel. That'd be great.
Exhibit A. Please join residents, farmers, and business owners in voting no on Measure B. It's bad for farmers, bad for private property owners, bad for taxpayers, and bad for responsible planning. Measure B was written behind closed doors with no public input. There were no public hearings to assess its negative impacts on private property rights and our general plan. Over 4,000 acres of land will be affected. Measure B will not allow a rezone to full-time agriculture if requested by landowners, or allow anyone to plan for their own needs. Measure B has numerous conflicts with the general plan and is so poorly written, even lawyers can't agree on its meaning. Even minor corrections will require costly lawsuits to clarify its meaning, with taxpayers on the hook to pay the cost of litigation or expensive countywide elections. Measure B is so confusing that all property owners in this area will have to hire lawyers at their own expense simply to tell them what they can and can't do on their own land. It will restrict owners who may need to change their land use due to illness, death, or desire to pass it on to their children. This is simply wrong. To lock up private property rights for almost a quarter of a century is simply wrong. Vote no on B, and then this is signed by the, I believe it's 5 individuals that have been previously mentioned.
Thank you, Mr. Keel. I do have one speaker request on this item. Mr. Kirk, do you want to speak to this item? Okay. Great, thank you. Thank you. Discussion with the board?
I'll move approval.
Second. Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Then I will just add that I am extremely in favor of property rights, and I am very concerned that we would take the property rights of those who live in that area and tie them up for 24 years, giving them really no chance to do anything with their property, make any changes, as explained in the rebuttal. And I think I'm very concerned about that and how that would affect people. It's pretty hard to predict what's going to happen 15, 20 years from now, and to have people have no ability to change the use of their property for that long is I think is way too long. Mr. Haas?
And this would certainly lower the value of their property over time. I'm very positive of that, so it would have the negative effect.
Mr. Kehoe?
Thank you, Chairman Modi. I believe a clarification is appropriate this time. When we talk about property rights, we're talking about owners of property that have gone through the legitimate process of getting permits and have it reviewed in public, as these developers have done in the Churn Creek Bottom area. And I say that that's what I say.
And thank you for the clarification, because I totally agree with you, and I think that's very appropriate. And certainly that would apply to anybody as well in the Churn Creek Bottom area who at some point would want to move forward and change their property, would go through that process that's required by the county. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Lees. Moving on to R5, adopt a resolution approving the memorandum of understanding between the County of Shasta and the Deputy Sheriff's Association Correctional Officers Bargaining Unit effective January 1st, 2012.
Thank you. Good morning. Michelle Schaefer, Director of Support Services. I come before you today with the memorandum of understanding with the Deputy Sheriff's Association that represents the correctional officers for the county. This MOU is actually for 3 years and 4 months long, which is longer than what we've done in the last few bargaining sessions. Sometimes we find longer MOUs are really great for both parties, sometimes because there's so many questions and it's so difficult to predict the future. We don't always do the long ones, but we found I think both sides agreed that for this particular group and for this particular time right now, the little bit longer term MOU was beneficial for both sides. So I'd like to take a few minutes to just explain the changes that we did agree upon in this MOU. We clarified that the correctional officers for the County of Shasta are covered by 830.1C of the California Penal Code, which basically clarifies that for Shasta County, they are considered, during the time that they are working, they are considered public safety officers and deputies for the time that they're working. That's what that clarification is. We will be providing a 5% stipend for those performing duties of a classification officer, which is typically 1 member per shift. We will be providing a 5% stipend for members who are certified instructors assigned and performing training duties in organized instruction of other county employees for the trainings of range master, defensive tactics, taser, impact weapons, and fire, life, and safety. Effective with the first payroll of fiscal year 2013 and 14, the shift differential will increase 25 cents from 75 cents to $1 per hour. Beginning with the first full pay period of fiscal year 2012-13, all hours worked over 80 in a biweekly pay period shall be paid at the rate of time and a half, and that's consistent with other county employees that work those types of schedules. For medical contribution adjustments, this is the largest change for this particular agreement. Effective with deductions from pay periods of December 2012, the county shall contribute the amount necessary to pay 95% of the premium cost for employee only, where currently we pay 100%, 60% for employee plus one, and 58% for employee plus family. The employee plus one and the employee plus family are consistent with what we currently pay. Effective with deductions from paychecks of December 2013, the county shall contribute the amount necessary for 90% of the employee only, so the employee will be picking up more, their own costs. 62.5% of the employee plus one and 62.5% of the employee plus family. And then December 2014, the county will contribute 85% for employee only, 65% for employee plus one, and 65% for employee plus family. I do want to mention on this particular section, that saves about $44,000 for the county just during the time of this MOU, let alone the future savings. Now the employees are picking up more of their contributions. I also wanted to You received a copy today of page 14, where we added the years in the dental. We've always had an agreement that we increase dental premiums by maximum of $5 based on the adjustments. But it was always kind of vague as to exactly when during the year we adjust those. And so we've put dates of June 2012, 13, and 14 in that on section 10.2. So we made that change as well. Both groups have agreed to continue discussions of looking into modifying California government code that will allow modifications to the PERS healthcare law. We belong to PERS healthcare. The legislation controls that. And if we want to make any changes to our contributions or how we address retiree costs or future employees, we need to do that by legislation that we both agree on. So we've agreed to continue those discussions. New hires after the date that we've amended the contract with PERS, they will be at 2% at 55 for the PERS safety versus 2% at 50, which is what we currently have. And then in April of 2014, we've agreed to discuss possible wage adjustments only. I'd like to thank the bargaining unit. It was a very professional process. We met about 6 times. During this time, it's really hard. Everybody's been making concessions in their home life and in the work life. And these times are really difficult to bargain when there's not much to do to help or to give or provide. So we've come up with great resolution, the long-term contract. There is an overall cost because we have made a couple of adjustments of approximately $166,000 over the lifetime of the contract. But both sides agree that it's very beneficial for the county, and this resolution was very positive for both sides. So thank you very much, and I'll ask.
Questions of Ms. Schaefer? Mr. Lees? And
Thank
perhaps
you.
before you ask your question, let me see if I can add a couple clarifications. I think that would help. A couple things. One, you mentioned the 5% stipend for the classification officer and for the
Yes.
And so again, I want to reiterate, both those instances, those are at times when they're actually performing those duties.
Yes.
So a training officer, when they're not training, is not being paid that.
Correct.
So I make sure the public understands that. Also, on the shift differential, you mentioned the 25-cent increase, but that now becomes consistent with what I understand with all the rest of our shift differential that we have for the other groups. Don't the other groups have that now? They're consistent with the other.
There's different amounts for every bargaining unit, but this was not unreasonable.
I thought it was the same as what the deputies were getting. Oh,
No.
okay. Then
No.
then my mistake there. That's right. Thank you for the clarification. On the PERS retirement, you talked about for future employees going from now it's at 2 at 50 to 55.
Yes.
And we do have the 3-year average.
Yes, the 3-year average is already in place for this group.
Okay. And then just to reiterate, the employees who are paying their share.
Their full
Share
100% of their contribution. Yes.
Employee contributions. Make
Yes.
that clarification as well. Good. Mr. Lees?
Thank you. Just to clarify, I think Chairman Modi, the item number 5 on the list was the thing that we wanted to put in line with the deputy sheriffs, and that was beginning with the full period where the 80-hour is, anything over the 80 hours is the time and a half. So that was the thing that was in line with the deputies. So you were correct that there was, there was something there. I wanted to add, when we talk about the potential savings, I don't want to underestimate how significant this contract is. Now, we have gone through 3 MOUs in the last 4 months, I think. And each one of those, on the heels of a couple years ago where none of our employees received any salary increases, 2 or 3 years ago, and they all, 100%, are paying 100% of the employee portion of the PERS pension. So that was a 7% cut for some, a 9% cut for others. On the heels of that, we have now come back in these next round of MOUs, still because the economy isn't any better, still asking those team members to continue to help us save jobs. And they have stepped up to the table. And this is just another example where the correctional officers under DSA have stepped up to the table. And they have put basically not a cap, but they are starting now to pay their own, a portion of their own health benefits now. And that has been similar to the other previous 2 bargaining units that we have just settled in the last 4 months. So our team members at bargaining units, they get it. They understand that they have to participate in order to save jobs. But, I mean, we really have to be grateful to them because they have taken another hit in helping to provide this. And when we talk about the overall cost savings of what this, where it was mentioned it's 44,000, this is just based on today's cost. We know those healthcare costs are going to go up. So that number is actually very optimistic. It's going to be a larger savings, I'll guarantee you, within a couple of years than we're predicting, but we just wanted to play it safe. So don't underestimate the teaming that has taken place with our labor partners in helping to save jobs here in Shasta County.
Thank you, Mr. Lees. Questions of the board, for the board?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Schaefer, we want to thank you and your staff for the fine work you've done on this, and
Thank you.
on behalf of all the board members, I know they all feel this way. We want to thank our correctional employees who, again, have stepped forward, as all of our employees have, to make sacrifices, but recognizing in order to keep jobs, but also to keep the county in sound fiscal standing. We appreciate their efforts as well, so thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I've been asked to take just a short break, so we're going to take about only a 5-minute break, 5 minutes, and we'll be right back.